threat to economic growth as it struggles to meet electricity demand. Eskom is the South African electricity public utility. But there's also the question of land reform. South Africa's lawmakers agreed to amend the constitution to allow for expropriation of land without compensation. This is to address the past injustices. Investors have been jittery about this. The president has on many occasions had to reassure them.
We've got to have land reform. We've got to address the original sin. But I am clear on one thing. We've got to do it in terms of the rule of law. We are not a banana republic. We are in Nelson Mandela's republic. And we will do it in accordance with the ethos that Nelson Mandela lived by and stood for.
After his inauguration on the 25th of May, President Ramaphosa is expected to announce a substantially trimmed down cabinet as part of cost-cutting measures. You're listening to Jamela for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Political rivals in Zimbabwe have signed a code of conduct that will govern a dialogue process meant to foster national unity. The country has been seeking ways of dealing with a raft of problems and promoting national healing.
Leaders of 18 political parties, including the ruling ZANU-PF, have signed an agreement binding them to respect each other and engage peacefully in talks aimed at resolving political, social and economic challenges that have dogged the Southern African nation since July 2018 polls.
It does not serve any purpose to continue in an election mode when citizens are yearning for socio-economic transformation and development.
The main opposition MDC alliance, which challenged the outcome of last year's election, did not attend Friday's launch as it insists that any talks must be brokered by a foreign mediator. Neighboring South Africa has said it is ready to assist in identifying someone for that role. President Mnangagwa, who has previously said the talks will go ahead with or without the MDC alliance, has left the door open for other participants to join the process.
During my inauguration speech following the 30th July 2018 harmonized general elections, I emphasized that I am a listening president and I will continue to listen. That pronouncement meant that I am committed to reach out to all stakeholders from every corner of the country who are willing to join hands in the rebuilding of our great country, Zimbabwe.
Since February, when the dialogue was initiated, 4 thematic committees have been established and contributed to the Code of Conduct. Farai Mwakutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Let's take a recap of some of the top stories making headlines this hour. At least 7 people have been killed in the last few days in Cote d'Ivoire in what is being described as inter-community violence. 44 others are also said to have been injured. Fighting erupted between people of the Baole and Diaola tribes on Wednesday at the town of Buemi. It is followed by an altercation between a taxi driver and a motorbike taxi operator. Protesters in Algeria returned to the streets of the capital Algiers for the 13th week to demand the removal of the nation's ruling elite on Friday. Clashes broke out as authorities attempted to break down demonstrations. A presidential election is scheduled for the 4th of July, but there are reports that this could be delayed due to logistical problems. And in Malawi, campaigns are heating up as the country prepares for presidential elections set for May the 21st. Incumbent President Peter Mutharika is facing a stiff challenge from a number of candidates, including former Vice President Saulus Chilima, who quit the ruling Democratic Progressive Party to form the United Transformation Movement. And after the ANC retaining power with 57.5% of the vote last week, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa now faces the daunting task of forming the cabinet which will oversee the transformation of the economy as promised. Top on the agenda is reforming Eskom, the country's electricity utility firm. And that is a recap of your top stories making headlines this hour. And we've got your business news coming up after the break. Here's a look at the headlines. Why restrictions on China's Huawei technologies could be temporarily scaled back in the U.S.
Accra is my kind of city. That's because when I'm here, I feel like I'm back home in Lagos or Aviation, which are two of the major cities I grew up in.
Business in Africa is high risk.
After about a decade covering business news on the continent, I've learned it's all about the high risk, but also the high returns and the high energy. You simply have to adjust in order to keep pace. When I started out as a journalist, my dream was to open people's minds to the different perspectives. From the CEO in the boardroom to the trader out in the street, we all have different stories. From Accra to Addis Ababa, from Cairo to Cape Town, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Here at CGTN, we realize that Africa is on the move, and it's moving fast, but we're moving right along with it. I'm Ucheo Koronkwo, and I'm a business anchor and reporter at CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. The U.S. Commerce Department says it could temporarily scale back restrictions on China's Huawei technologies. It came just a day after the U.S. blacklisted the company. The department said it may issue a license valid for 90 days as a cushion for entities who already have Huawei equipment, but it will not apply to new transactions. Meanwhile, French President Emmanuel Macron says it is not in his country's interest to take part in a tech war. German and Dutch leaders have also made it clear that they will not follow Washington's lead. Our correspondent Guy Henderson talks us through Berlin's stance on Huawei.
Berlin, Paris, other European countries are beginning to say, here are, what we want to do is say to China, say to Huawei, say to any company that want to operate in their country, here are a set of rules for transparency. If you follow them, you can operate here. If you don't follow them, you can't. Simple as that. Here is what the German Chancellor Angela Merkel said about it in a press conference with the Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte on Thursday.
I believe the path we have developed is very sound as far as 5G is concerned. There are security criteria that are commonly known, and in light of these security criteria, we will reach a decision on the respective companies. But what's decisive for us are the criteria based on which we will reach our decision on who will be part of the development.
I think another concern for a lot of European countries is to what extent they feel they can actually afford to fall out with China, which is an increasingly important economic and political partner with a lot of European countries. That's certainly one interpretation of Emmanuel Macron, the French president's comments when he said France should be realistic on this issue of Huawei. So, if European countries can't take the same approach as the United States has taken, the approach instead that it wants to take is to set up a sort of clear set of ground rules, not just on the Huawei issue, but a sort of united European policy when it comes to approaching China on things like the transfer of intellectual property, with all kinds of different issues, to say to China very clearly, these are the rules, and hoping that that kind of clarity is something that both sides can work with.
Aviation experts meeting in Kampala have warned that Africa's aviation systems are a potential target for terrorist cyber attacks. The concern was raised at the Africa Aviation Week Summit in Uganda, from where Isabel Nakiria reports. Let's take a look.
Aviation safety and security representatives from Africa say there is a possible threat from terrorists to hack into aviation systems. Participants from over 20 African countries say the industry needs to pay more attention to airport security systems.
You don't want a situation where somebody can hack into an air navigation system and make an aeroplane be navigated to a place that they are not supposed to go. There are some people who can make an attempt even to have an aircraft crash through air navigation system.
Airports in Africa have in the recent past faced threats from terrorists. In 2014, the US warned of a specific threat of an attack on Entebbe International Airport by the terrorist group Al-Shabaab, but it didn't happen. North African countries have also battled militant Islamic groups targeting air passengers. In 2015, the Islamic State blew up a plane leaving the Egyptian beach resort of Sharm el-Sheikh, killing 224 people.
Aviation is international, so once they take down one aircraft, you'll find that it's different, a lot of nationalities that will have suffered as a result. And it can easily move from one country to another. So we have to make sure that our systems are tight and make it difficult for them to be able to resort to it.
Experts say better screening of both passengers and airport staff is required. The meeting notes that insiders like airport workers could be used as recruits by extremists.
You know, it is possible for people who work in airports, whether they are flight crew or whether they are ground crew or others who have access to security sensitive installations, there is a threat from insiders that we have recognized.
Though many airports in Africa have taken steps to increase security screening, groups here insist more is needed. To ensure safety of air travel, the meeting has recommended additional steps. They have prioritized the consistent training of airport security personnel in intelligence detection and heightening surveillance systems. It's expected that airports in Africa will take up these measures to avert any attacks. Isabel Nakiria, CGTN, Kampala.
In South Africa, President Cyril Ramaphosa says the fortunes of the power utility Eskom and the country are tied together. The debt-laden parastatal has faced struggles impacting the economy of the country. However, a plan has been unveiled to get the state-owned enterprise back on its feet. CGTN's Angela Coppola has more.
A burgeoning mountain of debt, gross mismanagement, and an aging fleet are at the heart of Eskom's woes. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa says there is a credible business plan to restructure and pull the struggling parastatal out of trouble.
Eskom is the only company, I think, in the history of this country which has worked up a debt of 430 billion rand. So it's a problem that we have to deal with. But in the end, Eskom is just too big to fail. It's just too important to fail. It's just too overarching in the life of our country to fail. It holds the fortunes at an economic level, social level of our country's life in its hands.
Ramaphosa has given his assurances that the power utility will not be privatized, but government will enlist the help of the private sector to ease the burden.
China, they have been able to bring in the private sector as equity partners in China Mobile, in the telecoms company, list them on the New York Stock Exchange, and that's the trajectory that we should now be following, because there's a great deal of value to be extracted when there's a partnership and collaboration between private sector and the public sector.
South Africans who have had to endure power cuts for the last 10 years will have to be patient a little while longer. This is President Cyril Ramaphosa is due to announce the turnaround plan during his State of the Nation address in June. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
According to a Reuters poll taken earlier this year, foreign currency bonds from sub-Saharan Africa are expected to perform better in 2019 despite ballooning debt levels in some parts of the region. Factors such as the diminishing prospects for further U.S. interest rate hikes are expected to support demand. Opinion was, however, split on which country would dominate the overall improvement. Uche Okonkwo checks in on winners and losers in Africa's bond market this year.
Analysts seem to agree that Africa's foreign currency bond markets will offer better returns this year. Angola, Nigeria, and even heavily indebted Zambia have been tagged as key markets to look for value in 2019. That is, after 2018 emerged as a year of disappointing returns, especially for net oil exporters. However, the Republic of Congo's dollar bonds have emerged as the best performers in Africa so far this year, yielding returns of more than 15%. Fitch Ratings recently upgraded the country's long-term foreign currency issuer default rating to CCC from CC. The government is more liquid thanks to higher oil revenues, and there is reduced risk of disruptions to payments of bondholders. The Central African nation has also agreed in principle on a debt restructuring plan with China, a precondition for an International Monetary Fund bailout. On the other side of the spectrum is Zambia, which has yet to start formal talks with the IMF and agree on better terms for Chinese loan repayments. Yields on Zambia's $750 million of bonds due in 2022 have climbed almost 500 basis points since early February to 17.45%. Its 2027 bonds trade at 15.8%. Analysts say that yield curve inversion can be seen as an indicator of just how concerned investors are about the situation. The country may be forced into restructuring if it fails to get an IMF bailout or friendlier terms on bilateral loans from China. Angola and Nigeria are also offering better returns this year. But like their peers, a lot will depend on the US Federal Reserve's rate trajectory, which of course will determine investor interest in Africa's debt markets. So far, it has slightly veered off its plan for further gradual increases, instead saying it will be patient. While traders are saying as the trade war heats up, the potential for the Fed to cut interest rates is now rising, which of course could mean less interest in Africa's debt markets going forward. Uchero Koronkwo, CGTN Africa.
Well, the news continues on Africa Live. We have more amazing and wonderful stories coming your way, including the 6 centuries-old tradition marking the breaking of the Ramadan fast in Egypt.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Cote, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Senegal recently held the 18th International Chinese Bridge Competition. The contest showcases students' ability in Chinese proficiency, strengthening the world's understanding of the language and culture. It covers a speech contest, art performances, including poetry, songs, and paintings. 11 students from different universities took part. The winner will represent Senegal in the final stages of the competition in July in China. The competition was organized by the Confucius Institute of Dakar in partnership with the Cheikh Anta Diop University of Dakar.
This year's competition is under the theme One World, One Family. The family has a special meaning for all of us. The Chinese and Senegalese people are all very attached to the family. One World, One Family also corresponds to the principles on which Chinese diplomacy has always insisted.
Yes, I'm ready. I have been preparing myself for months. Now I will carry the flag of Senegal high. I will proudly represent Senegal in China and bring back the trophy for the first time here.
And now to a story about a special canon. During Ramadan, Muslims abstain from food and drink from dawn till sunset. Since the 15th century, a cannon in Cairo has been fired to mark the breaking of the fast. Our correspondent Adel El-Marki describes this 6 centuries old tradition in the following report.
During Ramadan, Muslims anxiously wait for the time the sun sets to break their fast and start eating. And by tradition, there's a sound that has been related to the beginning of that period, the Ramadan canon. That frightening sound is a joy for millions of Muslims in the Arab world. It's the declaration of iftar, the time they are allowed to start eating during Ramadan. It's a tradition believed to have begun more than 550 years ago, when a new sultan came to Egypt as the ruler of a great state in the Islamic Empire. Khosh Qadam received many gifts.
One of the historic tales recorded says a friend presented a cannon as a gift to the Sultan in Egypt. Delighted with the gift, the Sultan decided to try it out. He detonated the cannon. By coincidence, it was sunset on a Ramadan day. Citizens in the Egyptian capital were delighted about the concept that they can break their fasting at the same time. It then became a tradition.
The cannon has been a breakthrough. It made everyone hear the fasting's end at the same time, back when no technology was available. And that tradition spread across the Islamic Empire. To date, several Arab countries still use the same cannon method during Ramadan.
The cannon used to be celebrated in a match every year when it gets out of the warehouse to be set up for Ramadan. 3 people used to operate it, one to load, one to aim and fire, and a third to clean it. Today only one person operates it and no projectiles are installed.
This same cannon used to mount Cairo's iconic citadel. Yet after archaeologists' warnings that it could harm the ancient building's foundation, it was relocated here. Today, many people depend on radio and television to know the iftar time, while the caller shouting for the iftar cannon to go off stands here away from any public attention. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
And don't go away, we've got your sports news coming up after the break. Let's take a sneak peek at the headline. In sports news, South Africa 800-meter national champion Prudence Sigodiso eyeing Tokyo 2020 Olympics qualification.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. We begin with athletics news. Caster Semenia's stellar career has been shrouded in controversy, yet through all the challenges the world and double Olympic champion has faced, she has remained a beacon of strength, inspiring many young athletes to take to the track. Semenia's inspiration has led to the emergence of the new South African 800 meters champions Prudence Sigodiso. Here's CGTN CS Duplessis with more.
The high school student surprised many by finishing in the top 20 of the World Junior Cross Country Championships and has backed up her performance by claiming gold in the 800 meters at the Junior African Championships. But her breakthrough performance came at the National Senior Women's 800 meters, where Sigodiso proved she is a future force to be reckoned with.
Every time, when I step on the track, I just want to run a PB, always.
The 17-year-old, who hails from the same province as her idol, failed to impress on her high school trials, finishing last in each of her races, but 2 years later, the girl known as the Rain Queen by her coach started to show her true potential.
She's a special talent, as I said. And what excites me about her is the work ethic that she put on the track, and also during training and during competition. She's one person that you can work with the whole day.
Sigodiso says she almost chose soccer over athletics, but after speaking to her brother and watching Caster Semenya in action, she was convinced to take up the 800 and 1500 meters.
He was always like telling me that, don't you want to play soccer with me? I was like, nah, I'll see. And then I don't know what came into my mind, and then I just told myself that I just want to run and then see what's going to happen when I grow up. Maybe I'll be like Costa, because my dream was to be like her.
She's only 17 and already being touted as the next big thing in South African women's athletics. A national title in the 800 meters and a personal best is just the beginning for Prudence Sekgodiso, who is targeting a sub-2-minute 800 meters in the next 12 months and a place at the Tokyo Olympic Games. CS du Plessis, CGTN, Pretoria.
And women's football giants Olympique Lyonnais face a strong challenge to their